welcome back to our channel, or if you're new here, I'm Becca and I share this channel with my best friend Sophie. So I'm training to be an accountant at one of the big 4 firms and Sophie is training to be a lawyer. So if you're interested in either accounting or law, make sure you subscribe to our channel and like this video and also comment below. Today's video is all about partner interviews or just generally interviews in order to get like grad schemes or internships or like a job at one of the big 4. So I really hope you find it useful and that you enjoy. So as always, in the description below I will link all the timestamps to the different elements of this video, so you don't have to watch the whole thing if you don't want to, if there's just a certain section. But I will go through all of the questions that I got asked in all of my big 4 interviews, and I've spoken to my friends as well that have done big 4 interviews and asked them for their questions, because some of them were for like summer internships, some of them for grad roles, and also for all of the different companies within the big 4 too. So hopefully you can get a bit more of an insight, and I'll also briefly run through how I would answer each question. So I really hope you enjoy. So first question, nice and easy, is usually tell me a bit about yourself or tell me more about you. So with this, obviously I usually start with my name. You can also talk about, where you're from, your education. So think about like how you'd lay out a CV. So you'd go, your education, so most recently university, what you're studying, any kind of modules you enjoy. You then go on to talk about any previous work experience that's relevant or irrelevant, and also any like fun hobbies or volunteering that you do, or something like a fun fact about you that they can remember, basically. But with this, I try and keep it to like 30 seconds, a minute, and don't waffle on too much about yourself, but just very briefly a bit about you, and definitely think of something that they can remember you by. So for example, if you've just been skydiving, or if you volunteered in Uganda like Sophie did, the link to that video will be in the description. Just something that they can remember you by. The next question that usually gets asked is then, what do you know about the role that you're applying for? So for example, when I was applying to audit, it was, what do you know about audit? So like, what is audit, and what do you know about the role that you'd be doing? So sometimes people just apply to like every single role under the sun and they don't really care at all, don't look at it. And then when this question comes up, it's like, what do you do? So you've got to research, like what does an auditor do? So again, we've got a video about that, which I'll link in the description. But more generally, like what is audit? What's going on in the industry right now? Make sure you're like aware of the role that you're applying for. And with that one as well, if anything has recently come up in the news, especially about the company or just generally, like make sure you're aware of that. And for that, you can look at like the Financial Times, just like search the name of like the industry that you're looking for or the company, and also a Google as well. So next they usually ask you, why did you apply to this role, or why does this role interest you? So now that you've discussed what the role is and what you're going to be doing, why do you like that role basically? So for me, for this question, I studied accounting and finance at uni, so obviously it was like a natural progression. I loved the topic and the modules to do with audit and accounting generally. I thought it was really interesting. I think it's a great qualification to have, and I think the firm is like a great one to work for as well. But hold off on talking too much about the firm specifically, because that question will be coming up soon. So then in some of the interviews, they have asked me, what relevant experience do you have that relates to this? So sometimes this can be in the form of like a situational question. So it could be like, name a time when you've had to work in a team, or name a time where you've had to deal with a difficult client or a difficult team member, any of those kind of, the normal interview questions that you can get. So with these, my best tip would be to use the STAR method of answering. So situation, task, action, result. So I think me and Sophie have done like a full talk about this in one of our other videos about interviews, so again I'll link it below. But basically you want to talk about a time where you've experienced that and relate your previous experience to the situation, and also like apply it to what you do differently in the future. So a question that the big 4 absolutely love to ask is, what are your strengths and weaknesses? So sometimes this is like a bit weird because you can list loads of weaknesses but like not many strengths, or sometimes it's the other way around, I guess. But for me, I find it hard to like think, okay, what are my like absolute top strengths? It can be difficult. So start off with the easy one for weaknesses. So my answer for this is usually to do with organization. So I like to be very, very organized and in control of everything, and I like to kind of do everything myself and oversee everything myself, and I find it quite difficult to delegate sometimes. But I think that through university, you know, I've overcome this. And again, you can give an example. So in group projects, obviously you've got to rely on other people, and it's always worked out well for me, especially at university. You know, there are certain people I feel like you can really use their strengths. So for example, if someone's really good at graphic design, let them do that. If someone's really good at, you know, like written language and like business talk, let them do that. You've got to delegate basically, and you can't just do everything yourself for everything. And I think that's probably my biggest weakness in terms of what I'm working on, and what I have been working on the past few years. And then regarding strengths, this is when anything to do with like the company's competencies would come in. So, you know, if they're wanting someone who like works great in a team, is great under time pressure, is great at communicating, like whatever their competencies are, and you can usually find these on their company's website and also in the job description. You can use these here, but also talk about you specifically and your strengths. Try and relate it to a situation if you can, but just very, very briefly with that one. Another one that I know EY like to use, and a couple of the other firms, are why should we hire you over someone else? So this can again also be a bit daunting, but it's similar to the strengths question, you know, why do you think you've got what it takes basically to do this role? And I think a lot of the time you can talk about willingness to learn, your positivity, your background. If you've like got Excel background or an accounting background, obviously great. If you've got like a sales background, like you've worked in a shop or a restaurant, you know, like how has that helped you and enabled to like confidence to communicate, or with presenting, or, you know, anything like that. It can be whatever you want to relate to it, but why you over someone else? So the next one, there are two parts to this next question, and they love to ask it. It's, have you applied anywhere else, and why would you choose us over them? So like the specific company over the other people that you've applied to. So to answer the first part of the question, the answer is of course you have. I mean, like, be honest about it. If you haven't, then obviously be honest too. But most of the time, people have applied to multiple places, and just be honest, you know, they're not expecting you to only choose them. They're expecting you to have applied to multiple. So I wouldn't worry about the fact that you have. And then the other part of that question, why have you chosen like us, or why would you choose us over the other big four? So at one of my recruitment events that I went to whilst I was at university, I asked someone at KPMG that, you know, why did you pick that firm over the other big four? And they said it's because they had their birthdays off at KPMG, like they give you your birthday off. So I guess, you know, if you're applying to KPMG, you can use that. But I think just generally, it's really good to research the company. So I know, for example, that Deloitte allow you to do like a month off unpaid leave. So you can do like some traveling or whatever you want, you know, once you've been qualified and everything. So things like that, if you've researched their company and you know like a lot about them, you're already above most people, to be honest with you. And if you can like portray that in any kind of way, especially towards those kind of questions, I think it always looks really good. Other things that are generally really good to mention is like the culture. You know, have you spoken to someone that works there and that, you know, has explained to you about the culture? Have you spoken to someone at like a recruitment event? Has the interview process so far been really good, and you felt like really comfortable? Have they got like a massive push for diversity that you really agree with, or climate change that you really agree with? Are they using, you know, like new AI technology for certain things that's an area that really interests you? Whatever it is, it really doesn't matter as long as you can relate it specifically to that company and show that you want to work for them and that you've researched them. So I've got a quick funny story about this as well with mine. So when I was at the end of my summer internship and I was applying for the grad role, I had an interview, and one of my questions was why us over the other big four? And I said, oh, because, you know, you don't have that many scandals compared to the other big four. And this is a lesson for you all to do your research, because literally that morning in the Financial Times and also all the other newspapers, a big scandal had broken out with that firm. I mean, I still got the job, which is great, but, you know, make sure you're doing your research before, because you might not be as lucky. But yeah, that definitely taught me, you know, be careful what you're saying and make sure you're keeping very, very up to date, even the morning before with the news. Okay, final two questions now. First one that I've been asked sometimes is, where do you see yourself in the short term and the long term? So short term usually is like finishing your degree or finishing whatever education you're in, and then hopefully getting a grad role. And within short term and long term, you can also say like non-academic or non-work related things too. You know, if you've got any other goals, it might be a nice time to share that as well. Then regarding long term, for me personally, it was to progress up the career ladder. So, you know, to become a manager and then potentially like a partner or a director after that as well. But yeah, I think a really, really good point about the Big Four generally is that they've got such a clear progression. And by that, I don't mean you go from like assistant manager to senior manager like every single year, but each year you usually go like up one step within whatever the general job title is. So I think that's a really good thing to have within a firm, and that's definitely what I plan on doing in the long term. And then the final question, which is pretty much always in like any interview generally as well, is do you have any questions for me? And make sure you always have questions for them, even if it's what do you love about your job? I've heard about this in the news recently, like what are your thoughts on it? I've heard like, it doesn't matter what the questions are, but definitely make sure you've got questions for them, and it should be like a conversation rather than like a one-sided them just asking you questions, you answering. Like it should be more of a conversation. So if you think of questions throughout, you know, you're not interviewing them, they're interviewing you, if that makes sense. So obviously don't overpower it, but I think it always looks good to be inquisitive and ask questions. So that's the end of it. I really hope you've enjoyed, and best of luck in your interviews for the Big Four. I've also filmed a video on assessment centres. I'm not sure if it will be out before this, but if it is, I'll link it in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you next time. Bye!